the fact that it's taken this long for us to like move past this hurdle because it holds us back. Like it holds us back in what God has planned for us. Hello and welcome to the Weaponized Marriage podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Hewitt.
And I'm your host, Kendra Hewitt.
And today's topic is this. We're going to talk about, we're going to continue the conversation about getting naked in your marriage, in your money. And I'm going to piggyback on a conversation that we just finished with our therapist, Stephen, and a story behind what we've sort of experienced and realized, and, something that hopefully will be relatable to others and something that you can take away with in your marriage, and hopefully, hopefully have what I'm calling crucial conversations that either the man or the wife, or I guess couples avoid, that are costing them intimacy, costing them in their connection, costing them, in their time, right? Just wasting time existing in this space of disconnection and not being able to be heard or expressed or seen, and just things that could be obviously, like, when it comes down to it, deep down, like, I desire nothing more than for you to be happy, right? That makes me so happy when I see you happy, when I see you fulfilled, when I think that I've made you proud of me, when I think that I'm doing a good job, when I can tell that you're like, grateful for your life. But it steals from, my mind share and my energy and my fulfillment when I don't see you happy. And I think that it's really easy in a marriage to just exist in a place where, like, you're comfortable by avoiding certain topics or conversations that are basically like underlying fires that are burning, that can eventually lead to, whether it's, separation, divorce, or bad choices or whatnot. And for us, one of the things that has always been a sore point and a sticking point and something that's been painful, especially for Kendra, and is the topic of money in our marriage. And we have a unique situation where um, we run a business. We've started a business together and we run the business together. We've also bought a business together, sold a business together. So we've done a lot of things together, but truthfully, underneath it all, we've actually operated very independently in how we, move and make and manage money.
Mm.
And we talked a little bit about this last week and in some of our other episodes about how, I was stuck in the like producer mode and just trying to make money, and Kendra was in the background trying to manage
Keep money.
manage the money, keep the money, not spend all the money, and biting her nails off when we had bad months, and you know, being able to sleep at night when we made overhead and payroll. But that's not the conversation that we've been avoiding. The conversation we've been avoiding in money, and even to this day, is a collaborative weekly conversation about how we are making, managing, growing, and have a vision for our money together. Because we found a default with one another in how we like operate in money. And it's like, I have the money that I have and Kendra has the money she has. And we sort of like have found a comfortable place of like, you buy this stuff, I buy this stuff, and we have a budget and we've talked about it, but then we forget about it. And we don't have like a shared vision of money where we want to like save money, where we want to invest money, what we want our money situation to look like in 1, 3, 5, 10 years from now. And Kendra's been avoiding this conversation with me. We've attempted in the past to have routine meetings, and both of us have avoided them. Both of us have come up with excuses of why we couldn't do the meeting, or we'd show up to the meeting and not really know what to talk about or where to start. So we'd be like, well, fuck this. This is like a waste of time. And then Kendra would like have something to talk about, and we would talk about it and end up in a fight. So Kendra put together like, hey, every time I talk about money with Ryan, it turns into like him getting angry or reactive. And then what is the point of this? I'll just handle it myself. And we've operated this way for a lot of years. And somehow we've gotten to this point and we have not even like fixed that problem. And this keeps coming up in therapy also, even with like therapy that wasn't that good. Like we found an amazing therapist now, even in therapy that was like not really that deep.
Before,
I found,
like in the
yeah,
past.
in the past, that has come up where it's just like, why don't you guys just have a weekly meeting? It sounds like you got a lot to talk about and get off your chest. And we just have not seemed to get over the hurdle of making this meeting happen. Like we've committed to this podcast now, like this is 21 episodes at least. You know, we've committed to weekly therapy. We've been on and off commitment with date nights, but like we've made we're very committed to like when we work out, you know, our meal prep. I'm very regimented with like my work schedule and so on and so forth, but we just somehow can't go beyond this sticking point of like making this meeting happen. And
Personal meeting.
yeah, well, personal or a business meeting about money. So in therapy today, um, what came up was like the obvious need for this meeting, but then Kendra's energy immediately shifted and changed about this meeting because she's like, "Well, I've already sent you your bank account login, and you still don't fucking know how to do. You know, still don't do it. I sent you the profit and loss sheets, and you still don't open and look at them." And I like every time this comes up, it turns into like you should have, or you could have, or you haven't yet, which puts me on the defense. And in the past, especially, I've been poor at deflecting and like accepting this criticism and like being able to like stay firm without reacting. But Steven had caught this and he's like, listen, like, what are you getting out of that, Kendra? Like, why are you like still on the what hasn't worked in the past? Like, he's opening up to like making a time with you and wanting to move on with this money situation. Like, what are you getting out of continuing to talk about how he's fucked up this and that and not done it and isn't doing it? And I think it like it hurt Kendra's feelings, I could tell, and it wasn't because of me. It was because she was beating herself up about, you know, the guilt and shame that she had put on herself, that you put on yourself. Um just about how she's always taking care of everything when it comes to like defending our money and reallocating our money and making plans for our money, and like she's just tired of it. Um yeah, and I guess I'm getting on today to get emotional about this, to realize like I know that you take responsibility for it and beat yourself up about it, but fuck. Anyways, I
No,
want
but tell
I
me
want you to
what are you
I
what is
want you to
making
know that like I appreciate and like recognize how you fought for us in that department. And I don't want you to feel that way anymore.
what makes you emotional about it?
Well, what makes me emotional is just the fact that it's taken this long for us to like move past this hurdle, because it holds us back. Like it holds us back in what God has planned for us. You know, not just about like making more money and do, you know, it's like it's moving past this like block in our connection, because as we talked about last week, like the symbol of money in marriage is very powerful. And there's clearly still like this awful block that holds us back in all areas, spiritual, sexual, communication, everything. Um yeah, and like I don't want you to feel responsible for like that, your reaction of like, you know, being I guess it's like not expecting a meeting about money to go well with me, because I
Mhm.
know. I know. But if we don't try and we don't approach it differently and we don't talk about it and we don't like commit to it, it's not going to get better.
I agree.
So anyway, we're having like an on air, like difficult conversation, and this is how they go. Um, yeah, they go by like taking responsibility first and foremost, and then coming to an agreement of what you're going to do different. And what I'm going to do different is I'm going to come to the meeting. We've already agreed on a time. It's Thursdays at 3. And I'm going to come to this meeting with an agenda. You might not like the agenda.
Yeah. Well,
It might
where
not be
the
perfect.
conversation with Steven went sideways, I think we should interject this here, was you turned it around on me and you said, "We don't have an agenda. That's part of why we don't meet," and which was
No,
not
I
the
was
truth.
talking about why it had failed in the past.
Yeah.
Okay. I was saying this keeps coming up that we need to meet. And the excuses of why it didn't work before was like, you would say, well, what are we talking about today? You don't come here with an agenda. And like, you would put me on the defense and make me feel bad about how I'm not prepared. And then I would, turn it around on you and tell you about
Yeah,
something
we would
you did
get
wrong,
into
whatever.
like tit for tat.
Yeah, of course.
Basically.
And that's when if you're in the tit for tat, it's like, okay, right here, this isn't productive. This isn't going anywhere good.
And that's how the conversations would go. So I would just avoid them because I was like, oh man, we're just gonna go back and forth with no movement. No movement forward.
Right.
And even though I think we had a shared vision, which is what some of the stuff we talked about last week, and we still do have a shared vision, we have not cohesively collaborated to make that vision a reality from a financial standpoint. Like, it just can't be, and this is something that I have lots of guilt and shame for, but, like, you would ask me to, like, "Oh, I want this for the practice," or, "Oh, I wanna spend this on coaching." And, like, a lot of times, it would be in situations where it's like, "You have 2 hours to decide if you're gonna sign up for this $30,000 coaching program." And I think, one of the things that I feel a lot of shame and guilt about is that I would just say yes.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't really think it out, and then my my thought process behind it would be, "I'll figure it out."
Well, why would you say yes then?
Um, I think because, like, I had that story of, like, I didn't wanna be that wife that told you, like, "Hey, you can't do that."
Mm,
Like, I didn't wanna say no, and I'm a yes person, like, I really struggle with
mhm,
that, like, saying no,
mhm,
um, in lots of areas of my life, and I think that, like, today it just got lit up a little bit,
mhm.
that, like, I'm not willing to just say yes anymore, um,
Yeah, but
without
I'm
being.
okay with that.
I know, but well, no, I don't know that, without being, like, more discerning.
Mhm,
Like, "Hey, does this," and I think, like, you led into, like, budget, and this is something that, like, I'm a big believer in, like, you talk about things that are coming up in your life, and they're presenting themselves for a reason, and I feel very strongly that, like, this is coming up, and I don't have any idea why I'm so emotional about it. This is not my intention of how this is gonna go,
breathe.
but I think, um, like, stuff comes up for you to present it because it's time for it to heal,
Mhm,
and it's funny that you brought up about the past therapist. Our past therapist before Steven was a guy named Dan, and Dan always we got to this point several times, and he was like, "You just need to have a meeting." And we were like, and we would yes him.
mhm,
And we would say, "Yes, we're gonna do that. Yes, we're gonna do that."
mhm.
And just we never
And
did it. Like,
well,
there was something that didn't
we did,
connect.
but I'm saying we did do it in the past, but again, there was always reasons and excuses, and then
And then the tit for tat.
and then the fight,
Yeah.
right? And then you're like resistant to do it because of the resentment around
Yeah, my story
the
became,
money.
it's easier to avoid him, it's easier for me to just do it myself.
Yeah,
Which
and then how many people have that story about sex?
do you sex yourself?
Do it. I'm gonna do it to myself because it's easier to do it to myself than it
Then
is to
actually, yeah.
approach
Yeah.
like my wife that makes me feel like a
Yeah.
pervert because I wanted to have sex, or that she like is resistant to me or not, whatever. So, I mean, the same thing could go for that topic. Um, and the thing is, like, both of them, sex and money, are so connected that I think, like, when you release energy about one, the other one gets better also.
Yeah.
But I think where we need to go from here is like the crucial conversation, or the collision that I like to call it, about for us is about this money meeting. And I think we both worked past like our acceptance and our understanding of why it hasn't worked, and both of our stories about why it's not worked in the past.
Yeah.
My question to you is like, what are you committed to on Thursday at 3 that's different than before?
Well, I mean, not going back into the past, like, not holding stuff against you and coming from a, like, when we were just working with Steven, like, my personality is this is where I think it's really helpful to have a therapist that understands a lot of the dynamics of personality in
Mhm,
addition to his skill sets that he has, because my personality, on the Enneagram specifically is a 6, and he's very versed in the, Enneagram, and the 6 is a loyalist, right? Like, they are the people you want to advocate for you because they are very good at advocating for other people, but where they struggle is advocating for themselves. And, one of the ways that a 6 will start to express themselves, and this is like I said, more personality, it tends to come off as a condescending, critical tone,
mhm.
where it's like, "I told you so," and blah, blah, blah,
Why
and
didn't you? Or
"Why didn't
I've
you?" or
already told you.
Why would you do that?" Like, kind of like, "I've already told you this 100 times" language, and in
But
these
and then you call that the truth,
yes,
and
and
it probably is true.
it is
It's
probably true, but the tone and the delivery of it does really triggers the fuck out of you, right? And then I think from a personality standpoint for you, one of the things that I really struggle with is that 3, which is what Brian is an achiever. And the achiever is on to the next thing before they've even like acknowledged that they've finished the thing that they were just once was a goal for them. So they're
Mhm.
always on. So part of the conversation, specifically when it comes to money, this could also probably relate to sex too, is that it's been when I've had conversations with you, it's like always like where I'm trying to reflect on, hey, here's what's really going well. Here's where we've done well. I always try to do that push, pull, hug and
You do?
method, right? Where
You
it's
do?
like you
I mean, you use that on your coaching clients, but you do that to me?
yes, I mean, I think you do it a lot of unconsciously where I'll
Mm.
recognize like, hey, we did this good this month, or this was,
Well, I
like,
think you tried to do that last time.
yeah. So I'm trying to do it. But I have to consciously think about it. Like, I have to think about, like, "Hey, here's" because I'm such a also part of my personality is, like, I look and you part of your personality too, is I look for the problem. Like, I'm a problem solver. Like, that
Yeah, I'm
is
the same way.
something that, like,
That's
you solve
literally
problems for
my job.
people all day, and so do I, just in a different capacity, right? And, I think where I was going with this is that part of the money conversation is that, like, even when we're in a really good place, it's like you're on to like, "Well, that's not enough," or "Why do we have that much
I
debt?"
never
Or like,
I
like,
never
"How'd we get there?"
I never verbalize that, but yes, I am very, very quick to move to like, well, this part isn't good news, even though there's this much good news.
Yeah, and
But
you're a fixer
yeah,
by nature.
and I realize this, which is why gratitude is such a big part of what I am attempting and getting better at practicing, because I know how much it improves like me. How much it helps me and my life, which is my marriage and my business and my leadership and my employees. Right, because it can turn into, like, exhaustive, right?
Yeah.
Wow, it's just never enough. It's just
So
always a
what I'm
problem.
bringing awareness to though is like that we get into this old pattern. So the reason that we, like I said, it started originally talking with Dan, our original therapist, about this meeting, and then now fast forward, God, that's been 2 years,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So it's 2 years almost. We started with him in like May, like April, May, June of like 2
Okay.
years ago, right? And it's like 2 years later, and we're just having this conversation, we're having to revisit this conversation again.
Mhm.
So, one, if you're a couple listening to this, first of all, there's hope for you because
Yeah.
you can revisit things that you still thought you had were working on, but, like, that's what stuff like this does, is it brings up stuff that, like, even, like, last week when we talked about the sex and money symbol too, is just like, what's the thing that, like, you would be, like, kind of afraid to, like, I gave that assignment as, like, that you would
Mhm.
be afraid to talk about your spouse, and I gave that homework, and I remember, like, driving in my car after being like, "Oh, fuck," like, "Man, that was some deep homework that you needed to give yourself," you
Yeah. So,
know?
what is that for you?
What we're talking about right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm like, "Oh, shit, we still are not on the same page in having this meeting."
Yeah. So it's happening
Yeah, so
Thursday, 3 o'clock.
yeah, and now we're gonna have a babysitter that's gonna be able to, because Lily's out of school now. So, like, there's all these things that need to have to happen, but they're not, but, like, being committed to it and forcing it to become a habit.
Mhm.
Right? Even when it feels uncomfortable, even when we don't have our agenda set, even when we don't have, and, like, I think that one of the things we talked about with Steven was just, like, kinda starting small and not getting dragged back into the past, which for me is really difficult because when I go to the, critical, condescending Kendra, I like to bring things up like, "Hey, you have access to the bank account, why don't you just log into it?" But it's I realize that, like, shit like that's not gonna move me forward.
Yeah, that's not part of the push pull hug
Yeah.
approach. So I think we can wrap it up from here, as kind of a short one, but an important one, I think. And like the assignment is, of course, last week you had said, what did you say? What was your assignment last week?
What was one of the thing, like, in sex or money
Oh,
that you were
one
uncomfortable
uncomfortable thing. Yeah. So, I
talking
mean,
about?
similarly, like what's a collision that you need to have, with your spouse? And
And
when
a
I,
collision with love.
yeah, when I say that, it doesn't mean start a fight.
Yeah.
What it means is like, again, and if you didn't do it last week, it's pretty similar. It's like, well, what is something that has been looming in your marriage, even like in your heart, that's like, you want to have a conversation with your spouse about. And so obviously it's not good to like spring it up, maybe 8 in the morning before you're taking the kid to school and like off to work. Like take the opportunity to make the space, or even you could even like strategically, plant the seed like, hey, I really want to have an important conversation with you later. Like, can we pick a time, sit down on the couch at 8 o'clock tonight? And, if it's an uncomfortable conversation and something that you're going to, potentially, cause disruption, which obviously like a collision does, like Kendra was saying, like lead with love. In other words, make sure that you're taking ownership for your part in it, and you're presenting it as something that is like important to you and why, right? Not just like an attack on the other person. Um, because it always takes two to
Yeah, because
tango.
that's how you also get them to most
Open
people,
up.
if they're an avoidant like I am, they will run from that
Yeah.
conversation. They will avoid that conversation if
Which
they.
is probably the pattern you're already in. If you're avoiding the conversation, you're already in the pattern of avoidance. And like, you
Yes,
know,
you have to change your approach.
yeah.
Like, I think about it from, like, a flight standpoint in terms of, like, as a pilot, right? Like, is that, like, when you're flying and you're talking to ATC, air traffic control, and they're like, "Hey, we need to switch runways, and we need you to change your approach because, like, the weather's changed," or
Mhm.
something like that. It's like, man, it's like sometimes you need that person that is actually gonna save your life, which is air traffic control at that point, and they're trying to avoid the disaster.
That's
Right?
good.
They're
It's
trying to help you avoid the
a
disaster,
good
and
analogy.
it's like, a lot of times you don't actually have ATC talking in your headphones of like, "Hey, we need you to change to runway 16," like, so how can you maybe start to think about, like, what would be a possible change in approach to this that might be different? So, for example, like, if you lead with, like you just said, if you are in a relationship with someone that you're like, "Hey, I need to have an important conversation," let me tell you this, if you say that to someone with very recent or some sort of trauma in your marriage, that's not gonna be well received, right? Like, if you had an affair on your wife and then you say, "Hey, I have to tell you something really important and I need you to sit down with me." I'm gonna tell you right now, if that trauma is unprocessed on that other side, that person's gonna go right to that trauma. So they're not in a place where they can receive that conversation. So I think also, in addition to changing your approaches, maybe you change your approach on how you actually lead the conversation that you need to have, which is like, "Hey, you know what? Could we maybe go for coffee instead of like, hey, I really want to have an important conversation with you?"
Okay. I mean, depending on the topic,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
suppose.
yeah. No, no. That's what I'm saying is like we're talking specifically right now about money, but it could be about something else. It could
Yeah.
be about sex. Like, like
Yeah. It could be about your gambling addiction. It could be about
yeah, it
something
could
like,
be like, "Hey, I spent, 10 grand and I didn't tell you," or like, "Susie Q got arrested last weekend and I didn't let you know." I don't know.
anyway.
But like, I think that like just your approach changing the aspect of changing your approach on a conversation that's crucial but has been avoided is really like what I think we should kind of
Yeah.
wrap on.
I think people get it. So.
Okay.
So, if you enjoyed this conversation or got some value, please rate, review, share, love one another, and we will see you next week.